So this is part 2 of the encapsulation videos. This is the challenge exercise. So let's type up what the challenge is. So this is the encapsulation challenge. To create a class and to demonstrate proper encapsulation techniques that you've learnt in the previous video. The class to create will be called printer, and it's going to simulate a real computer printer, a laser printer. So some of the fields that should exist in the class should be one for the toner level, the percentage of how much toner level is left, the number of pages that have been printed, and also whether it's a duplex printer. Now, a duplex printer is capable of printing on both sides of the paper. So you'll want to add methods to fill up the toner, which should fill it up to a maximum of 100% based on the current value. So if it's only 50% full, you have to figure out a way to make sure that it doesn't go up beyond 100%. And you need to add another method to simulate printing a page, which should increase the number of pages printed variable as well. And you also want to take into account the duplex functionality and print out a message if the printer is a duplex printer when it's printing. Finally, decide on the scope whether to use constructors and anything else you think that's needed to demonstrate proper encapsulation techniques. So pause the video now, go away and check that out and try that out. And when you're ready to come back and see my solution, start the video again and I'll go through it with you. Okay, how did you get on? Did you create a solution for the printer class using good sound encapsulation techniques? So let's give it a go. We're going to create a new class called printer. So I'm going to go and do that now. Printer. And we need some fields. We need a field for the toner level. So I'm going to create just an integer, private int toner level. And what I'm going to do there is I'm going to set that to make the only allowable values to be between 1 and 100. And each number from 1 to 100 is going to be the percentage full that the toner is. Pages printed is going to be an integer as well. Pages printed. And lastly, whether the printer is a duplex printer, in other words, capable of printing both double-sided, I should say, I'm going to create a variable, Boolean variable. We're going to call it duplex. So that's set to true. It means that it is a two-sided page printer, and if it's false, it's just a single page. So next we need to create a constructor. So what I'm going to do is to do just that, create a constructor. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set two fields as the constructor parameters, the toner level, and also whether it's duplex. I'm going to leave pages printed out of the constructor, because that would normally be something that's set in the actual printer itself. It wouldn't be something that you would create or you need to add in the constructor. I'm going to initialize that to 0. So I'm going to click on those two and set those, as you can see there. I'm also going to put this pages printed, we're going to initialize that to 0. We're also going to do a test here. We're going to put if toner level greater than -1, because we can allow the toner to be empty. So we want to make sure the value is that we're going to accept between 0 and 100, and the toner level is less than or equal to 100. Then we're going to put else. What we're going to do is we're going to put this toner level equals -1. So that's often a way to set a variable and make it just indicate that it hasn't been set correctly by setting it to -1 if it doesn't fulfill some validation. So that's our constructor. So next we need to create a few methods. The first one, we want to create a method to replace the toner, making sure that we can't get it beyond 100%. So I'm going to create a public method. We're going to actually, it's not going to be a void, it's going to actually return, and the integer is going to be how much toner we actually added, making sure that we don't exceed the 100. So we're going to put add toner. We're going to accept a parameter which is the toner amount. So the first thing we need to do is make sure that the amount of toner that's been passed to this method is valid. So we can do that by putting if toner level is greater than 0. Now we're doing a greater than in this case because the very fact of adding toner to a printer is you need to actually add something. Unlike the constructor, which we set up, which actually created the printer object that could have a value of 0 to set the initial level, we're actually now creating a method called add toner, where we're actually adding some toner to the printer. So therefore we want to make sure that the toner level is actually greater than 0. So it's greater than 0 and toner level, so toner amount that should be, is less than or equal to 100. This one there should be toner amount. So that's the total amount that we're actually trying to add to it. And we'll come back and add that code shortly, but we're going to put an else return -1. So again, that's another way of returning some sort of validation, some sort of status. In this case, we're saying if it falls outside of those of the toner amount being greater than 0 and less than or equal to 100, we're going to return -1, which is our way of saying you attempted to add some toner to the printer, but it was outside our valid ranges. So therefore, what we need to do now is we need to actually test the amount of toner that's already on hand. Then we need to add to that the toner amount that was passed to this method, and if it actually exceeds the total amount of 100%, we need to return an error. So to do that, we're going to put if this dot toner level plus toner amount is greater than 100, return -1. So there's our test to say that if, for example, there was 50%, the toner was half full, so the value of toner level was set to 50. If we get past an amount of 60, that if we added the 60% to the 50, that would be actually 110% full, which is not possible. So we're not going to allow that. So we're doing a test to add those two together. And if they're greater than 100, it means we're trying to overfill it, which isn't possible. So we're just going to return an invalid number. Otherwise, at this point, we're now able to add the values because we know that we've validated it correctly. So I'm going to put this dot toner level plus equals toner amount, like so. And then we can put return dot toner level. So we're going to actually return the amount that it's now set to. So we're adding the toner and it's returning how much toner is now in the toner cartridge, and we're returning a -1 if there was an error. And if that's the case, we're not actually setting anything. We're not changing the value of our toner level. So that's how to go about adding the toner in a method. So the next thing to do is now to actually implement the printing. So I'm going to add the printing method. So we're going to click on public int print pages. We're going to call it print pages even though it's possible to print just the one page. We're going to put int pages, the number of pages to print. And what we're going to do is we're going to assume that the page count is actually the number of physical pieces of paper that are going through the printer. So therefore, if we are in duplex mode, if we're printing on both sides, what we need to do is divide the total number of pages by 2, because that's the net number of pages that were printed. So what we're going to do is we're going to put int pages to print equals pages. We're going to put if this dot duplex. We're going to put pages to print divided equals 2. So we're going to divide the total number of pages by 2 if we're printing in duplex mode. Then we also have to print out a message to put printing in duplex mode, just so it's clear that we're actually printing in the duplex mode. So that's our print pages method. And the other thing we need to do is return the number of pages that were printed. So we're going to type return pages to print. But of course, there's also one other thing we need to do. We need to update the pages printed. We'll put this dot pages printed equals plus equals pages to print, like so. So that's that. And the last thing we want to do is we want to add a getter so that we can actually retrieve the number of pages printed to check that the value is correct, like so. So that's our basic class now. So let's go and try using this class. So We go to this class here now, the main class, and printer equals new printer. And of course, the parameters are toner level. We're going to start with 50%, and we're going to say true initially. So let's try doing the page count. So we know that what the page count is. It should be equal to 0. So we'll put initial page count is equals printer.get pages printed. And again, we're using encapsulation here with our constructor and also with our getter here. So we're not accessing the fields directly, which is correct encapsulation techniques, object-oriented programming. So let's now print, say, 4 pages. So we're going to put printer. What we'll do is we'll put int pages printed equals printer dot print pages, and we'll say 4 initially. And we're going to put pages printed was, remember this is how many physical sheets of paper were printed. Pages printed, and then we'll put plus new total print count for printer equals, and that's going to be our printer dot get pages printed, like so. So let's try running that first and see what it does. And I'll just move this over so we can see it a bit better. So the initial page count was 0, which is correct. Printing in duplex mode has been set because we just defined that to true. Pages printed was 2 because that's the total number of pages was actually 4, but because we're printing on both sides, it's only 2. New total print count for printer equals 2 as well. That's correct. And just to make sure, let's do another one. Let's put, we'll put pages printed equals printer dot print pages. Let's say there's another 2 pages. And let's just print it out again. So let's now run that. And you can see that what's happened here is working correctly. It's now the second example. It's printing in duplex mode again. The pages printed was 1 because we passed only 2 pages. We had 2 pages to print and it printed on both sides. New print count for the printer overall is now equal to 3, which of course is 1 more than the previous count. So that's the total number of pages, A4 pages that have gone through the printer. So that's working. And then just to confirm, let's set duplex to false. And what we should do is get some different values here now because we're not printing on both sides of the printer, or of the paper I should say. We'll run that. Initial page count was equal to 0. Pages printed was 4. New total print count for printer equals 4. That's because we're now not printing in duplex mode. We're not printing double-sided. So 4 pages to print used 4 sheets of paper. And in the second example, we used another 2 pieces of paper and it needed 2 pages, because that's what we actually passed to as a parameter. And the total print count was 6. So that's the printer class using encapsulation. So it's very, very good object-oriented sound programming practice to use encapsulation to hide that functionality from your other classes. In this case, you can see that we're not accessing any fields directly, and we've got proper methods that are actually doing the appropriate calculations or adding and subtracting numbers hidden away from the user. So if you're someone who's using this printer class, you've got no idea of the internal workings of that class, and in fact you don't need to know it because all you're doing is you're using any of these methods that have been set to public, the scope of public, and you're using those in a correct manner and everything's working perfectly. So that's it. That's the encapsulation challenge. I hope you got a lot out of that. Let's move on now to the next video where we're going to be talking about polymorphism and what that is and how to use that in our Java programs.